Welcome back to AI for the Humanities. I'm Megan McInnes Dominguez, Associate Professor of Spanish at the University of Delaware, and this channel is your go-to resource for exploring the intersection of generative AI and humanities education. Here, we explore the latest developments in large language models, examining their benefits, challenges, ethical considerations, and practical applications in the classroom. Whether you're new to AI or already integrating it into your teaching, you'll find valuable insights and resources here to help you navigate this transformative moment in higher education. In this episode, I'm thrilled to introduce one of our outstanding interns, Odalys Nuñez. A 3 languages major and recent graduate from UD, Odalys investigates the capabilities and limitations of ChatGPT as a language translator, especially in relation to Spanish dialects like Paraguayan Spanish. She explores the cultural stakes of using AI in language work, the environmental cost of large-scale models like ChatGPT, and real-world uses of AI in advertising and education. Let's get started.
Hello everyone. This is video one of Humanities. My name is Odalys Nuñez, and I will be going over ChatGPT. I will be going over the advantages, the downsides of this AI, and the different ways that it can be used for the humanities. So, how does ChatGPT work? ChatGPT is a large language model. This means it's being trained on text based on different blogs, websites, articles, and other reading materials. A general large amount of data. It can generate responses in a chat box, which means the user can respond with a task, question, or statement. Asking to somebody, and ChatGPT will analyze his input and produce an output in real time. One of the downsides is that it doesn't use real-time information because it is a web search, which needs to be prompted. And it can produce, because of this, can produce inaccurate or biased information. It can utilize tools such as Python, image generation, web search, and file analysis. So for file analysis, for example, if I were to upload a resume, it would be able to give me feedback on it. All this information is actually from ChatGPT. So if I were to ask ChatGPT, explain how you work, ChatGPT replied with, sure, here's a clear breakdown of how I work, which it means it's changing the language based on my input. So it goes over what am I, what I am, ChatGPT, large language model, explains how it works, it's being trained, and generate responses, and recognizes limitations, doesn't think or understand like a human, no emotions or consciousness, no real-time information, and can occasionally make mistakes. And here is a breakdown of the tools that it can use: Python, image generation, file analysis, web search. So with that in mind, let's go back to it. What do we think of ChatGPT besides what ChatGPT thinks of itself? We agree. ChatGPT is a large language model and has been trained on interpreting semantic meaning of language, translating between human languages, or recognizing patterns. It came out November 30th, 2022, and by February 1st of 2023, ChatGPT had released ChatGPT Plus. Well, rather, OpenAI had released ChatGPT Plus. Since then, it's been incorporated into different websites or apps, such as the language learning app Duolingo, which released Duolingo Max in March 14th of 2023, powered by ChatGPT 4.0, where it has features such as roleplay and explain my answer. In roleplay, the user will be interacting with characters and it will be a story. However, the narrative of the story changes based on the user's replies. And as for explain my answer, pretty much what it says, the user is able to request an explanation of why an answer was wrong or not. Which takes us to, can ChatGPT be used for translation? Or rather, how well can it be used for translation? Based on my personal experience with ChatGPT in my own time as a student and my research, I think that ChatGPT can be used to find sources, organize ideas, and summarize big points. all as a starting point. I think that anytime anybody is prompting ChatGPT for an answer, there needs to be a certain level of care um, put into it, since not all answers will be correct. And as for the language lens, or specifically just in translation, it can be used to explain translation and different grammar points. It can be a chatting partner, both voice and typing wise. So if I were to download the ChatGPT app on my phone, I would be able to speak to it and it would be able to reply to me. And in both of these locations, it can be both typing and chatting voice wise. It can be utilized to practice a specific region's way of speaking. Um, so if I wanted to get a little bit more practice on my Spanish accent from Spain, I would be able to do so. Um, so for the purpose of this video, I came up with a few easy sentences that I think a person who just started learning Spanish might struggle a little bit with. So I'm currently recording a video for a class project. That my own translation. Estoy grabando un video para una proyecto de clase instead of the correct on, since I wanted to see whether ChatGPT would be able to pick up on the fact that I mistranslated that to begin with, or mistyped that. And then I also want to see whether it can explain what certain words or verb conjugations were chosen. And even though it's a pretty short sentence, I wanted to see whether it would be able to switch it to Argentinian Spanish. Um, just to see what it does with that. So let's test it. And you move me over here, and I can start a new chat with ChatGPT. And I get the free plan limit for GPT 4.0. So let's make that go away. And let's translate to Spanish. We're going to copy the entire prompt. Estoy grabando para un video para un proyecto de clase. And let's see whether it picks up on the mistake that I added. And recording a video for a class project. It did not. Is there anything I can improve on my original? Almost perfect. The article before proyecto should be proyecto is masculine now. So it should be un proyecto instead of uno proyecto. So the correct sentence is estoy grabando un video para un proyecto de clase. So I was able to break it down and give me the correct answer. That's pretty nice. Let's see. So let's instead translate to Spanish. The other day, I wanted to see whether it would just translate it literally or it would give me maybe like a different word. While the literal translation is still pretty natural, I wanted to see just what it would do with that. Grabé un video para un proyecto de clase el otro día. Still pretty natural. Let's see, can you use a term other than? Let's make sure the accent gets under. El otro día. It gives me some días, recientemente, hace poco. So your sentence could be, that's pretty nice. It even replaces it for you. So let's change this sentence. I'll just copy that right off. Translate to Argentine Spanish. Okay. I was about to get upset at it, but I won't. It says grabé un video para un proyecto de la facu el otro día. And facu is an informal short word for facultad, which is true. It can be used for university, college. I would be upset since it added a word that it didn't exist in my original sentence. However, it provided an explanation as to why it said so. It's not great. Well, I mean, it's not bad because it gave me a translation and all the conjugation is correct and all that. I wish it would give me a different option as for facultad, just to make it more natural, since I didn't specify whether it was for college or for what type of school. So the other thing that I wanted to work on is what a lot of Spanish learners struggle with when they start learning is they confuse the predicate with the it will come back to me. So for the demonstration, we will only focus on two of the tenses that Spanish has to offer. So let's see, why did you choose grave instead of grababa? Which is once people learn about grababa, it usually creates a lot of confusion. So great choice. Great question. The choice between grave and grababa depends on the context. Grave is a predicate tense. It can be talked about a completed action. This is true. And grababa is the imperfect tense, which is used for ongoing or habitual actions in the past. Also true. I was recording a video when something else happened. I wish. Yeah, no, that works actually. Oh, it does go on further. Um, I think this is pretty nice. I think if I were to say the same thing to Google Translate, it would not be able to give me a breakdown of why it chose a certain term or a certain conjugation, which I think is a strong suit of ChatGPT. However, there are still like things to be careful about, I think, as sentences get more complicated. So why don't we go back to it? And let's go to the following slide. So initial uses. Um, it did explain why it was supposed to be the masculine article instead of the female one. It was also able to kind of localize it a little bit more to Argentina. We will not be going over the chat and partner portion of this AI, but be aware that it can be used for that purpose. So, what are some of the downsides? A very big impact, a very big downside of ChatGPT is its environmental impact. AI in general, not just ChatGPT, can demand a staggering amount of electricity, which in turn results in increased carbon dioxide emissions. These AI are powered by hardware. While we don't see it, there are like actual computers that are running this, and it's a very, very rapid way of processing, which means that it needs water to regulate the hardware, the temperature of this hardware. And in turn, because there is a higher demand for high computer hardware, this means that there's going to be a higher demand for manufacturing and transporting this hardware. The data centers that contained all of these actual computers trained AI are used to train and run the large language models. However, these new models are released constantly. There's multiple other AI other than ChatGPT, and all of these are releasing new versions, which means that all of the energy and water that was used for these AI, it goes to waste. And on top of that, new models will have higher processing available, which in result would cost in more energy and water being used. Noman Bashir is a computer and climate impact fellow at MIT, and he works at the Climate and Sustainability Consortium of the university. And he focuses on how to make computing, and AI in general more sustainable. However, he has said that the demand for new data centers, which are the housing for all of these high processing computers, cannot be met in a sustainable way. The pace at which companies are building new data centers means the bulk of the electricity to power them must come from fossil fuel based power plants. So the energy needed to power these AI is not sustainable in the long run. Um, for example, getting more specific, Microsoft used approximately 0.000 liters of fresh water during ChatGPT's training in its data centers. That's enough to the water needed to produce 370 BMW cars or 320 Tesla vehicles. For a stable conversation of 20 to 50 minutes, the water consumed is equivalent of a 500 milliliter bottle. Um, this by itself may not be a large amount, but considering the billions of users around the world and all of the companies going AI first, this will in turn turn into a very large amount of water. Um, at the same time, ChatGPT is not the only AI. So all of the other AIs will also be consuming water and electricity, just something to keep in mind. Um, when I had started making this video, I originally wanted to compare ChatGPT and Google, hoping to see some advantages with Google. However, there are also some downsides with Google. While a ChatGPT prompt consumes 10 times more electricity than Google search, Google has also been switching to be an AI first company. Uh, Experts say that ChatGPT, the infrastructure related to power this AI, may soon consume 6 times more water than Denmark, a country of 6 million. The UN points out that this is a problem, since a quarter of humanity already lacks access to clean water and sanitation, and the water being used to cool down these computers is fresh water. Meanwhile, while a Google search alone consumes less energy than a ChatGPT prompt, Google has now also enabled AI search. So, if I were to look up how much energy does a Google search with AI consume, I would be getting an AI overview. This is a feature that can be turned off, but for the purpose of this video, I wanted to have it on. Um, and they will give me a breakdown and it will give me some sources to look at, which is nice. However, this is still AI. There will still be mistakes or hallucinations within this answer. And it means that the cost of every Google search for a regular user that doesn't think about the um, consequences of using AI, it will not, the user might not think to take this feature off since it is convenient and there is not that much awareness of the energy and the resources that go into powering AI. In 2021, Google had a goal of reaching net zero emissions by 2030. However, since the release of AI, it has now deemed this goal extremely ambitious. Other side effects that could come up, experts say, is that ChatGPT could eventually lead into an AI-powered self-driving car that's way more popular than public transportation, and it would in turn facilitate driving for people, which means that more people would be more likely to drive instead of biking or using public transportation to get to places, which in turn would push up greenhouse gas emissions from all of the cars going around. And there will need to be a higher need for higher computing uh, hardware to be able to run all of this. There's also a worry that ChatGPT could spread misinformation about climate change to make users more likely to use. In the humanities sense, AI has also been used in advertisement, which is also an issue since it replaces human workers. Um, this is a lovely picture of a couple sitting at a orchestra. However, if you notice, there are several mistakes in the couple's hands. The orchestra is somehow sitting in the audience. Um, and you may think, well, what's the problem with this? Well, surely somebody just generated this. This was the Queensland Symphony Orchestra in Australia, and it published this ad in Facebook to get more people to come and see the orchestra. However, I believe there is certain irony in an orchestra that uses human work and human talent for the arts, replacing a human artist that could have drawn a picture or taken a picture of this setting and instead used AI. While there's no way to know whether this was generated by ChatGPT or not, one of the functions of ChatGPT is generating images. And you may say, well, the orchestra doesn't focus on drawing, the orchestra focuses on songs. Maybe that's why it used an image generator. Well, Disney, the company that became famous for animations, released this poster in to promote their series Loki for their season 2. And while at first glance this may seem like an interesting piece of artwork, there are a lot of mistakes, such as there is squiggles that just randomly appear between the numbers in the background of the image, which means that this was most likely generated by ChatGPT instead of drawn by real life artists. This is a final example. It's the poster that Amazon Prime made for its series Fallout, and at first glance, it may seem pretty nice. It is not. Well, it is, but it is not. There are several mistakes. The cars, it's kind of hard to tell which direction they're actually going in. They're facing to the front, facing to the back. One of the issues that we saw, for example, with AI in general, is when it's required to generate text, it has a lot of difficulty doing so, which is why in this example over here, there is just squiggles. We see the same thing over here. This is more than the glass being blurry. This is AI being used to replace human workers. The humanities in general, we are trying to do our best. This is a professor at Indiana University that taught this course called How to Translate Anything. And it was meant to test ChatGPT as well as other AI's abilities to translate. He's a professor and the chair of the Department of Slavic and East European Languages and Cultures at Indiana University. He also utilized SEO Trados for his translation. He found that there were a lot of strengths and weaknesses for AI in translation. It was able to limit some high context language, such as Japanese, which the speaker is not always said, but is implied, which is why it's high context language. However, we should also keep in mind that this is probably a high resource language, which is why ChatGPT was able to perform at a appropriate level. They did, however, find that ChatGPT struggled with creative aspects such as poetry and songwriting. The way that each language rhymes is different, and it seems that ChatGPT has not been able to get there yet. They also found struggles with AI hallucination, where a sentence would be translated and it would seem correct, but there would be new words added or mistakes added. And the only way to know that there are mistakes in translation is if you speak that language, which makes it more difficult. And it kind of removes the accessibility of using AI to translate, which I think also highlights that there will always be a need for human translators and that AI should not replace human workers. It should be a tool to make the work easier, but it should not replace human workers the way it did in the ads. And a worry with AI is that the more we use it, the better it will get, the better work it will produce. However, the higher risk that companies will just use AI to save costs without thinking about the impact on the environment and the need for human input. So the goal of this project, of this class, for myself, is to test ChatGPT's abilities to translate. I wanted to see how well it performed when translating Spanish to English and vice versa. And I am from Paraguay, and I wanted to specifically test ChatGPT's performance with Paraguayan Spanish. since there are a lot of things that make it unique within the Spanish-speaking world. And because of its size and the popularity and impact of my country, it might not be that it will probably not be a high resource. It will not be easy to find a lot of resources for it. And finally, the goal of this is to make a tutorial based on the findings of this project. And that is all. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. And thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of AI for the Humanities. It's been a pleasure to spotlight the work of Odalys Nuñez. What I appreciate most about Odalys' video is the balance she strikes between technical analysis and cultural critique. She doesn't just explain how ChatGPT works. She interrogates what it means to rely on AI in contexts where nuance, identity, and lived experience matter deeply, such as language translation and artistic creation. Her thoughtful exploration of gendered language bias, regional dialect challenges, and the real environmental costs of generative AI invites all of us to think more critically about the trade-offs of convenience and efficiency in an AI-powered systems. Odalys also reminds us that AI is not just a technological tool, it's a cultural force. When a symphony orchestra or a major entertainment company chooses AI over human artists, it sends a message about what we value in creativity and communication. Her analysis of these moments challenges us, as educators, creators, and scholars, to ask, where should the line be drawn, and who gets to draw it? This is exactly the kind of work we hope to foster in this channel, not just learning how to use these tools, but understanding when and why to use them, and how to do so responsibly. I'm very proud of the work that Odalys has done this semester, and I hope her video encourages you to keep questioning, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of how the humanities can shape the future of AI. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a colleague or student who might benefit. And don't forget to check out our other episodes featuring interns, researchers, and educators working at the intersection of AI and the humanities. See you next time.
Hey ChatGPT, what do you see when I ask you to talk just like me?